up there at 45.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Cyberspace, coming to you from RightsCon 2025, where our digital accessories, our hands-free devices are falling on the ground, but at least we have you here in cyberspace. And we're also here with Marwa Fatafta, who is Access Now's policy and advocacy leader on digital rights in the Middle East and North Africa. Marwa, thanks for coming on This Week in Cyberspace.
Thank you for having me.
You were there at the opening night, hosting a panel. Now the tables are turned. We're going to be asking you some questions. What have been some of the take homes for you from this conference, which is a gathering of some of the most prominent thought leaders in human rights in the digital age?
I think it's been an intense but much needed week. I think a lot of people here, whether it be activists or tech workers or even donors or media, they all are. We're going through very trying times, and I think everyone is realizing now is the time to sit together and strategize. There's a lot of big questions and little answers, for me, it's been really, really a productive week. We have a lot of huge rocks to move together.
Push up the hill.
Yeah.
When you say big questions and little answers, which might be the name of a podcast unto itself, or maybe it should be little questions and big answers. I don't know.
Yeah.
Give us a question that people are grappling with here.
One huge question is, how can we break the accountability impasse? Every room I walk to, everyone is talking about big tech, lack of accountability, big tech, lack of accountability.
Yeah.
How can we hold companies accountable? How can we hold platforms accountable? And it's a struggle. If I'm
it's an age-old question, like even from those early days when like Facebook was like, oh, we're not just like, a place where students can like rate each other, but we're actually like on the front lines of like political, revolutions in wherever. And you think they would actually like know now like the depth and the scale of their impact, and that they would become more accountable and that they would have more resources allocated to this. But the answer is the opposite, right?
Yeah, they know. And also I was just chatting with someone now about knowledge. That companies can't claim ignorance about the negative impacts and the harms they're inflicting on people around the world. They know. They read headlines just like we do. They live in this world like we do.
That we don't see.
They have legal teams, which I'm actually, I work in the MENA region where, working in extremely difficult contexts of war and war crimes against humanity and war crimes, like really big issues where the companies need to pay very close attention. And I'm really surprised like how their legal teams are not warning their CEOs or their managers, like, look, you might be risking contributing to very serious crimes. You need to correct course. But that is not, these conversations are not happening, or maybe they're happening on their side, but they're not sharing it with us. What I wanted to say is that, yes, they can't claim ignorance. They know. The question is, do they care?
Yeah.
That's what I was about to say. Do they care? It seems like they don't. They have the power.
Yeah.
And what we can do, perhaps, is disconnect.
I
was just thinking, what can we do?
I don't want to expose myself, but like, maybe being the radical person I am sometimes, I think. At this point, I really believe that either it has to hit where it hurts, that is money.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we are in a place where we can boycott at large these companies. We depend on them. So maybe not. But possibly strategic litigation. I don't know.
There's, I mean, the weird, not the weird, but the unfortunate thing is that the companies have moved from like, social media platforms and kind of retail tech also into the militarization of tech.
Thank you. That's where the future lies. That's where the money is. And everyone is sharpening their knives.
Yeah.
When Google removing out of their AI principles recently.
I want to talk about that. Yeah. Tell the audience about what happened there.
So I think it's from 2018, that Google had they have a set of AI principles that they've created for themselves, in which like how their AI technologies are used or should not be used.
Correct.
And one of which is that their AI technologies should not be used for surveillance, should not be used for facilitating gross human rights abuses, and not used to kill people or for military purposes. Now, we know that Google is a huge contractor for the so-called Project Nimbus in Israel, and some tech workers had said and warned that we are afraid that this huge contract is going to be like the testing ground for other governments using these technologies for military purposes. And when they removed that clause from the AI principles,
In February, this very month.
I thought, okay, that's their signal to say to other governments we're open for business.
Yeah. So they basically had a prohibition on their AI tools for military purposes, which they have now publicly removed.
Yes.
So it's given them a green light to other to governments to let them know they're in. It's also given other companies a green light, and it's also said to the employees, essentially, like, you now know that's what we do. So if you work for us, you can't mobilize against us because this is the conditions upon which you're now employed.
Yeah. And they know this is the future of tech.
We've just seen Janelle Monáe posing with a robo-doc, a dog, like as if it's some trendy fashion accessory. But the real implications of that kind of technology on the battlefield are horrendous. The dogs go and target and move across.
Drones, and
autonomous
even
weapons.
Yes, autonomous weapons, and even like less sophisticated things like predictive. I would say like the type of technology that a bank uses to decide whether you get a loan or not. It's the same type of technology that decides whether this person should be killed or not. It's the same type of systems, and the repurposing of these systems is what really scares me the most. It's not like a weapon that you see and recognize and you know what the dangers of which. It's also similar to the conversations we used to have during COVID, when all these contact tracing apps were being hurled out, and we were thinking, wait a second,
post-pandemic, what's going to happen?
The surveillance infrastructure, once it's rolled out, it won't be taken back.
And we had you're like this, almost the second last, I think, interview after like 25, and we've heard some amazing stories, including from Tatiana, who talked about her concern about the sort of transferal from domestic civilian to military after the war. So things that have moved from, the sort of stuff that you're talking about, that transition to military, but then the military moves back into the civilian when the war's no longer in place. So you still have those technologies, surveillance in the streets, or you have Pegasus used against what used to be against opponents, but now is used, adversaries now are used against political opponents. So all of this stuff. So the militarization of technology that happens in warfare actually militarizes the society post-conflict.
Exactly, because also it really depends on what the conflict is and how it ends. Because sometimes, whether it be in Ukraine or in Palestine, or you're not talking about just missiles being fired, you're talking about a situation of occupation.
Yeah.
So these systems are used for control. We're talking about systems of control. If it doesn't kill you, it will control you.
Oh, that is so scary. You've written a lot about the digital aspect of the war in Palestine. Where do you see that going now? I mean, it's just in such a bizarre place at the moment.
It's a scary, I said it in the opening ceremony that Palestine is a laboratory. And what scares me the most is to see those systems being exported and normalized. Right? That it's not just in one place where things happen and then, atrocities happen and then you can move on. And that's what I meant when Google is now signaling they're open for business. And then there are a lot of tech investors, for example, in the US, telling the Pentagon, "Oh, you're so behind AI. You need to catch up." So imagine then all the militaries are using the same tools for whatever purposes they deem necessary. And when you're talking about a world where fascism is on the rise, and the UN system and the multi-stakeholder system is being really, really tested.
Can we ask you about that? We've only got a couple more minutes, unfortunately, because we need to go to a session, Marwa. But um, the I wanted to ask you about the international system. You know, like we've in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
No, but like I know you've talked about this a lot over the
Yeah.
last 18 months, like the sort of unfair and unequal and unjust application of laws
Yes.
and frameworks inequitably to different conflicts or communities.
Yeah.
You've talked also a lot about over the years about Facebook's sort of discrimination
Yeah.
in the online sphere, including on the words like Shahid. You know, like where, how do we? Is it a sort of smash and start again? Like, is that where you're
I
at?
think that's right.
Yeah.
I really believe that law and systems are as good as you keep them. If they're not being enforced, if they're not being implemented, it's just ink on paper.
Yeah.
Right now, I think we are at a very disruptive seismic shift. And to me, it feels like the world is pretty much, we're going in the direction of post-World War II. We might come to a point where we have to figure things out from the start.
And do you get some hope from this gathering here in Taipei? Do you get a sense that there is a path forward?
Yes, because there are people around us who they have the same fears, the same concerns, and the same determination that things are not working and they need to work. So people are, they are adamant, and I think that gives me hope.
Well, Marwa, thank you so much for your time and for your effort and for your years of dedication to not just, what's happening as you see it in Gaza, but all through the Middle East. You know, so many of these countries that you have friends and colleagues and partners in who are facing, conflicts, cold conflicts, hot conflicts, people living in exile outside of their own countries. It's really important that we have voices like yours and all those of your colleagues. So thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. Really.
Yes,
A
Marwa.
pleasure. Thank you.